Welcome to Navigating Hope, your compass to health empowerment. I'm Dr. Jaime Hope, steering you through healthcare, overcoming overwhelm, personal goals, and emergencies. We'll navigate the healthcare maze with actionable insights and real-world advice, unlocking the secrets to a healthier, more vibrant life. Join us to take control of your well-being and make informed decisions for your health and your future. Stay with us as we unravel the mysteries of medicine, wellness, and life's unforeseen challenges, helping you bypass the ER with a dose of knowledge. Stay tuned till the end of the episode with a recap of your actionable insights and a free gift. Let's chart a course to your well-being together. So one of our mutual, very, very dear friends, Joe Polish, who's the founder of Genius Network, which is where we met, and Genius Recovery. And so this can also help in terms of addiction.
Oh, for sure.
And there's so many predatory things out there. They're like, oh, I can fix addiction, but this is in the same way that I'm afraid of bridges in Costa Rica. Addiction is right. It's a conditioned response. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I talk about addiction is not a problem. Addiction is a code. It's not a disease. Your brain has coded a way to stop pain. So if you've had psychological pain or physical pain, right? And every time you take a drug or you take a drink and the pain stops, now what you're doing is repetition. I say, think of repetition as research for the brain. The more you repeat it, the more confidence, right? The research is that it's accurate. And so now your brain will say, you don't have to think about it anymore. I'll take it over. And then you can't understand why you can't get out of it because you created, right, an unconscious, right, ability to protect yourself. And that system runs the show. And you can't override it with reason and logic because if reason and logic was involved, there'd never be an addiction problem.
Right.
Because
We'd all
everybody
be
would
thin
stop
and
it.
healthy and exercise and no addiction, right? If
Yep.
reason and logic were the solutions.
But it's a response. So, but we blame these people all the time. What's wrong with you? Why are you doing that to your family? Why are you destroying your life? They don't know why. The same way you don't know why you know what you know when you walk into an ER, they're not sure why they're doing it. They just do it. And they've conditioned their brain to do it. And so the only way to get out of that is what I talk about is let's get to the root problem, the why, which is the trauma. Once we reset the trauma, then what we do is work on the codes. But it's easier to get the codes to change when you don't have the trauma activating the system all the time. And so that's why the program that we do is more effective because we don't have the resistance of the trauma stopping the changes in behavior.
That reminds me of it sure is a lot easier to fix a car when the car's not running.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
What was it saying? I'm going to build the plane as I fly it, right?
yeah. Oh
Same
my.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So and you talked about ACEs, the adverse childhood events, and they're rated and they're scaled, whether divorce, sexual abuse, this
Yep.
whole thing. And so, tell me about some people had like a big T trauma, right? Like
Right.
they can recall a specific event. I was kidnapped or whatever, but I know that there's this comparisonitis, and some people feel like I don't deserve to need to heal because what I went through wasn't that bad,
Yep.
but they're still manifesting the symptoms. So what do you tell people? Like, do you have to have a certain level of trauma to deserve to heal, to be worthy, to even be allowed to have symptoms? Is that how it works?
No, but that's very common because people will say, like people see on our site, oh, Boston Marathon bombing survivors, a Vegas shooting, right? Like I don't have anything like that. So I wrote my second book and I called it Emotional Concussions. Have you had an emotional concussion? And that could be the parent that was overly critical of you, right? So maybe not intentionally trying to hurt you, but a child growing up doesn't know, right? Doesn't have enough life experience to interpret these words and the way they're being treated. So they could develop an emotional concussion. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. And then that shows up in behaviors later on.
So it's so interesting. So we don't have to have been bombed. We don't have to have been kidnapped or escaped a genocide or fled a country to still manifest those things because we get that accumulation of those concussions, the smaller injuries, and we can still manifest the same level of the anxiety and the symptoms and the choosing to continue to respond to pain in a way that maybe isn't serving us overall, but our brain is just trying to protect us. So that can be with any level of trauma.
And trauma is relative. So your level of trauma could be completely different than mine, right? But it still shows up the same way. It's still a fear response, and fear is fear. And so your mind doesn't say, well, that's an 80% fear or 20% fear, right? It sees it all the same way. So
Well,
I'll give you
yeah,
an
like
example.
relative, your brain doesn't care about relative to other people. Working in emergency medicine for 2 decades, I have seen countless people die. It's a natural part of life, and despite what we do, and then there are some people who have never seen somebody die, and how that would be coded for them versus coded for for different situations. And so just because other people have gone through it and aren't traumatized doesn't mean that that trauma isn't real for them.
Exactly. I had one of the Boston Marathon survivors who came in. She said to me after she finished the program, she said, I really thought I was coming in because of the Boston Marathon, right? That was my big trauma. She goes, what you did for me for my childhood trauma was way more impactful. I
Wow.
didn't realize how that was affecting me. She says, but obviously people look at the big Boston Marathon and say, oh, of course, that's what you're going for. She goes, and I thought I was going for that. She says, but the healing that I got from my childhood trauma was more powerful
Wow.
because it will show up, so, even with the best of intentions. So I had a guy, business guy, very successful, makes about $2 million dollars a year selling options, derivatives. But he said to me, he said, fourth quarter, he goes, my anxiety goes through the roof. He says, I can't go into the office. He says, I get in there, I'm sweating. He goes, I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. He says, so I make excuses. My partners cover for me. And he says, but I feel really bad. Why am I having this severe anxiety in the fourth quarter? So we went back and said, let's take a look at your life. Great life. Really good parents. Like he says, no issues with that. But he says, my dad is my mentor. He's my hero. He says, super, super successful guy. He says, the most resilient man I've ever met. He bounced back 4 times from bankruptcy. And I went, okay, let's talk about that. And he goes, well, what do you mean? And I said, tell me about what happened with bankruptcy. He goes, well, I remember as a child, he says, we'd be flying in private jets. He says, and then in the middle of the night, my dad would wake me up and we'd be moving because we're getting evicted. And then we'd be back in private jets, right? 4 times that happened during his childhood. So what was his mind trying to protect him from? Losing everything in the fourth quarter. So it was preventing him from going into the office and risking anything else because his mind had that pain. Now, was his dad trying to do that? No. He thought it was resilience, which it was, but at the same time, his mind said, I don't want to go, I don't want you to go through that, and stopped him from going in.
Wow. And I wonder how many of us and those who are listening and all of us regular mortals and human beings are playing out a pattern that we don't necessarily recognize and
You don't,
letting,
because your mind's going to produce the pattern to protect you, even
yeah,
if it doesn't make sense, which is addiction. That doesn't make sense to be drinking, doesn't make sense to take a drug, but they're trying to stop their pain. And that's what
yeah.
the mind will do. The mind will protect you from pain.
I mean, overeating to the point where you're miserably uncomfortable and, physical discomfort from stuffing more food in there, drinking and poisoning yourself and feeling sick and vomiting and shaking, and then deciding the best way to fix the shaking is to continue to poison myself more. Right? If you explained it to somebody like that, that makes just absolutely no sense.
No, because it doesn't look like it. But one of the things that I talk about, and I think this really helps, the subconscious mind operates in the present. Everything for the subconscious is now. When does it want pain to stop? Now. When you take that drug, you eat that food, when did the pain stop? Now. It solved the problem. Because your subconscious has no connection to time, it can't see a consequence. You have to have a connection to time to understand that something's good or bad. But because it has no connection to time, it solved the problem in the moment. And that's how powerful pain is. So it doesn't want to be in pain. If you can solve it now by sticking a needle in your arm, It doesn't see that as right or wrong, good or bad. It's literal. Your subconscious is totally literal. That solved the problem. Go back to that, and then that code got built. That solves my problem. It's not about getting high, it's about stopping the pain. And pain is such an amazing motivator. So I don't know if I ever shared this with you. I found an article from a German sniper in World War II. I found the craziest stuff in my research. And he wrote this article and said, when we fought against the Russians, he says the Russians didn't have a lot of weapons, but they had a lot of people. He says, so their strategy was to charge at the German lines. And he says, my job was to shoot them as a sniper. He says, but another Russian would run out, pick up the weapon, and keep charging. And they just kept wave after wave. He says, they were relentless. He says, and then I figured out how to stop them. He says, I didn't kill them. I shot them in the stomach, which, as you know, is so painful to be shot in the stomach. So now the Russians lying on the ground screaming in pain were a bigger deterrent than a dead Russian lying on the ground. They didn't want to be in that pain, so they're not going to run out and pick up that weapon. Isn't that fascinating?
That is incredibly fascinating. And I see that with patients. It's interesting because you're giving them advice and you tell them that you could die, and they're like, right? Like that they don't, but you're like, oh, you could be in pain and have this disfiguring or disability for the rest of your life. And they're like, whoa, wait a second. Now let's
Yeah,
chat about
exactly.
because it is,
Yeah.
it's a powerful deterrent. And so I think people who are listening, who are struggling with addiction, or your loved one is struggling with addiction and you're like, why do you keep poisoning yourself? Because we just see that action, that treatment of pain. The saying is, addiction is a solution. It's not a
Mhm.
good one, but it is.
No, but it's a
It
solution. It
does
works.
solve the thing. And so I think allowing people to get to those deeper layers and the deeper layers and why and this is actually serving something.
Yeah. And as I say to people, of course you would. I've never had a drink in my life, never touched a drug in my life, ever once, but I never had their pain. So it's not fair to judge them because you don't know how powerful their pain was. So I had a lady come in who'd been on heroin for 7 years, and she told me, she says, my therapist told me to tell you that I have self-destructive behavior. And so I just smiled and said, really? What would make you think you're self-destructive? And she looked at me, she goes, well, I'm sticking a needle with a heroin in my arm. You don't think that's self-destructive? And I said, no, I think you're trying to feel better. And I bet you when you stuck the needle in your arm, you felt better, right? She goes, yeah. And I said, the substance is destructive. You're not destructive. You're not trying to destroy yourself. You wanted to stop the pain. I get it. Makes total sense. What if I could show you another way, right, that you don't have to deal with the pain, right? Your brain, your body is the greatest chemical factory in the world. You could produce that all on your own. You don't need anything. You have it all within you. Bless you.
Thank you. No, and it's interesting because I do, in addition to the work I try and do to advocate for people in the addiction recovery space, which is incredibly important to me, I help with people in the human trafficking space. And part of what deters people from being rescued, right? We all want to ride in on the white horse and rescue these people is the untreated pain and then the addiction issues. And I've seen a lot of judgment around that. And I just ask people if you were being sold against your will 20 times a day, like I would
Can't
want,
imagine.
like I'm like you. I've never tried drugs. I have no interest. But if I was being sold 20 times a day and someone offered me some drugs,
You
I
take them.
absolutely. Why wouldn't you? Because it's all you can do.
And
And
that's why I say it's not about character, morals, ethics, or willpower. We need to take that out of the equation. It's about pain. And what people will do to get out of pain is incredible. So I talk about if you and I were standing together and I was shaking your hand and I squeezed it so hard that you were in so much pain. And I said, Jamie, just take a drink of this and I'll let go. So you take a drink and I let go. So what's instantly going to happen is you're going to feel better, right? Because you're not in pain now. But is that why you took the drink? Right? You took the drink, right, to stop the pain. You didn't take the drink to feel good. And when I explain that to people and just say you need to understand that that's what addiction's about. It's not trying to feel good or high. It's trying to stop their pain. And if you understood their pain, you understood their atmospheric conditions, you'd understand why they do it. Right? I never did it because I never had their pain. That was my atmospheric conditions. But if they've had theirs, like Joe talks about, the atmospheric conditions that he came up with, how could he not have become an addict? I don't know how he would have.
Yeah, no, in though when you are in those circumstances and you don't have the other outlets for pain. He didn't have the resources, the support, the education. And when you're just in this continuously abusive environment from somebody that you trust in the most degrading way, you just want to get out of pain.
Yeah. And you'll do anything to get out of pain, including what looks like sabotaging yourself. But that's not sabotage. That's survival.
Yeah.
That's the only way that they can figure out how to survive. So I liked the way one lady came in and she said to me, she had been in alcohol addiction for a number of years. Her brother said he brought her in because he said she refused to go to rehab again. And what she said was, I said, so tell me what you're experiencing. She says, I refuse to go to rehab again and unpack my suitcase of shame. I went, wow, that was so powerful. That's what it felt like to her. She had to go in and unpack this suitcase of shame and open it up again, let everybody see what's in their suitcase.
Yeah,
So
because
what
it's
an
very much a
amazing
rip
way.
open the Band-Aid and confess all of your sins and misdeeds and mistakes. And that alone can be a deterrent from people getting help.
Absolutely.
But
So
that's
what
a
I'm saying,
condition of pain. You're talking about treating the pain.
yeah, and getting to the root cause, getting to the why. Why would you do that? I get why you would do it. I would do it too, right? So it's not about character or morals or ethics. It's about pain. So if we get to the why and we find the what has created it, and then we address the why, then we can work on the codes because the codes were only developed to protect you. And we call those behaviors or habits. So all we have to do is just get into the why, update, reboot the system, and it stops calling for the action.
And this
And
is real. This is long term because the Boston Marathon bombing was many years ago. Your daughter's ill.
2000, yeah, yeah,
How's your daughter doing?
no Crohn's, no lung disorder. Both are gone.
Weird. Being told that you have a permanent incurable condition and you got at the root cause. Huh.
Yep. And we see it all the time in different people. I had a couple ladies come in who've been in, had Hashimoto's, were on, medication for Hashimoto's, and now they're off of it because we got to the root cause. So I'm not saying it can heal everybody 100%. So I'm not looking and saying it's a cure, but if you get to the root cause, your chances are, as we've seen so many people, reset and change their lives, and it affects the whole system. So your fight or flight response is supposed to be an emergency management system. It's supposed to be what you see, right? The emergencies, right? But what it does is it becomes an operating system because of the trauma keeps running in the background. So it's like they're constantly coming into the ER like every day. And that's not supposed to do that. You're supposed to come in there when there's an emergency, you treat it, and they go home and they're fine. But they keep having to come in and they keep turning on their nervous system. And that's not supposed to be. It's like getting in your car, stepping on the gas all the way down to the floor, but using the brakes to go 30.
Wow.
You're going to wear out the
What a
system.
perfect description.
Yep. And so then they come in with brake problems, transmission problems, engine problems, right? And you're saying, well, why are they having all these different issues, right? It was the trauma that created all these issues, keeping the system on. And now they're coming to you, and now you're having to look at all these issues that they're dealing with. And all we had to really do is go to the why and get that
Yeah, stop
resolved.
replacing the brakes and figure out why our foot's on the gas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you say, so how are you driving your car? Let me go look. Oh my gosh. What
Right.
are you doing? Why are you stepping on the gas all the way? Oh, I've always done that, right? But you use the brakes? Yeah, I use the brakes to slow me down, right? Oh, now I know what the problem is, right? You got a
Yeah.
gas problem.
Wow. And so does this have to be in person? Does it have to be an individual? Can it be group? Can it be online? And is it still effective that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think you maybe saw the NBC show. The lady, the reporter on there did the online program and said it was transformative. So a lot of people do the online, it works. They can do one-on-one with me. I've done them in groups. I take people through it in groups. And we've just shot the online program now in VR. So
That's going
that's
to
the
be
next
incredible.
version. Yeah.
But rewinding to that group setting, so say like what we're trying to do is bring it into our emergency department. So I'm now with my colleagues and nurses and staff, so I don't have to share the details of my trauma in front of these other people at all, right? If you're doing this in a group setting.
None. I don't even need to know one word. Nobody describes it. I take you through the process in the group. Nobody knows what your trauma is. You don't have to disclose it. And I usually do an example for one person. I'll bring them up. And what's really good is if these are all people you know, and I bring one person up and I take them through a process and you literally see it healing for themselves. I love groups because you see it. These are people you know, and you're going, oh my gosh, I know what she was dealing with, right? I can see that she's doing better that fast.
And so you're working with organizations in terms of we want to get funding. We want to bring this into the hospitals, right? Because healed people can heal people. So if the staff are traumatized, and I assure you we
They
are,
are. Yeah.
and then if we can heal, that makes us better healers for those people and that ripple effect. So how can we, so patients are going to want to come find you as individuals, people listening. They're like, yes, I need this. I want this for myself, for my family members. And then how can we bring this on a bigger scale?
We just need the key really is the online version because I'm a limited resource. So the idea is groups are online. So getting corporations or people like your hospital to say, let's bring it in, take people through the program. Imagine how much more effective you guys will be, right? When you can stay calmer, right? Dealing with this. So because every time you deal with somebody, maybe somebody that died, right? When you were treating them, right? That's running in the background is going to make you think now I'm dealing with this other person. Oh my gosh, it looks like this other situation that I had. And so now are you at your highest level? No. And so I work with athletes. I love using the analogy of athletes because you guys are athletes, right? You're in a situation that you've got to perform at your highest level. There's not an ability to sort of take it easy and coast, right? You got to perform at a professional level. Imagine how much better the professional athletes are when they're calm. Imagine how much better you are as an ER doctor when you're calm and you don't have that old data running, activating your nervous system. Now you can treat them much better.
Wow. So that, I mean, there's so many opportunities, and that's why I wanted to bring you on to share this because people need to realize this is a paradigm that should be the norm. It's not because the old couch therapy thing. It's people are starting to recognize this isn't working. I'm still miserable. This is outdated. I don't want to unpack my backpack of shame.
Yep. Yep.
And so this is evidence based. We're
Yep.
talking about neuroscience. We're talking about brainwaves.
Yep.
We've got efficacy in multiple different situations, and you have long term data. We're not talking you
Yes.
feel better for a few days or a week. You've got years.
Yeah, if you watched the NBC special, Michelle, who she came in to see me over 6 years ago, dealing with 17 years of addiction, OD'd twice. And if you saw this, how beautiful she is. I mean,
Yeah.
amazing. And when she came in, I said to her, Michelle, there's nothing wrong with you and there's nothing wrong with your mind. I said, you've been dealing with trauma. And she goes, well, how do you know? I says, because you wouldn't be doing this unless you had trauma. So I said, if you follow what the process that I'm going to take you through, it'll just work. You won't have to deal with addiction again. Addiction is a symptom. It's not the problem. And you saw 6 years. Has her courts awarded her daughter back. She's got two businesses. She got married. I mean, totally turned her life around. And she's fine. That is not what the traditional system would have done. It would have said, okay, you're going to have to white knuckle this every day, Michelle. Every single day, you're going to have to fight this. And I went, no, you don't. It's a glitch.
Who would want to? That sounds exhausting.
Oh, I
And people
couldn't
resist
imagine.
recovery, right? Because if that's what it has to feel like all day, every day, that sounds
Yeah.
horrifying.
It was like you going to medical school and they said, okay, Jamie, for the next 8 years, you're going to be doing this every single day. We're never going to put you in an ER
Yeah.
department. You're going to have all this knowledge, but you're never going to ever practice.
It's gonna take a
You'd,
million
qu-
exams and go into six-figure student loan debt and spend your 20s. Oh yeah, what?
you'd quit. You'd have to quit.
Absolutely.
It's too discouraging. So what I say to them is, we'll get you back to who you are, right? Addiction is just something you dealt with, right? But it's not
And
defining you.
and I think that's key because if like we both have said, if guilt and shame worked, nobody would be overweight, nobody would do drugs.
Exactly.
It's like that. It would solve everything. So you do your 4 hours, but that's not all. So you don't just leave people like after the end of 4 hours, like peace out and good luck. You then give them tools
Yep.
to continue.
Yep, audios that they continue to listen to. People have listened to them for years. Michelle still listens. 6 years later, she still loves listening to the audios because they've trained the brain to stay calm. And so once you've trained your brain to do that and you just keep reinforcing them, you don't have to, but people love doing it because it's just because life keeps coming at us, right? So we still have things showing up. So it's just a great way to be able to continue to practice, right, what you learned.
It's a brilliant way to do it because let's all say we can all remember song lyrics from our childhood,
Yeah.
commercial jingle, all those things. So you're using that part of the brain. And with the audios and the repetition, putting it in their brain in the same way that you can call up some like nonsense local car dealership jingle from when you were a kid, right?
Exactly.
And so then in real life, when life gets lifey, as you said,
Yep.
things continue to happen. I can, instead of going to the stupid car jingle, I can go to this audio,
Yep.
and I
Yep.
have the tool. It's in there.
And we give lifetime access to the audios. So you have it forever. Once you've gone through the program, we put you in the inner circle. And then I do a webinar every month. You have full access to the webinar every month. You can come in, ask a question. So once you're in, you're in. And then you have access to these tools. Like I said, people have been listening to them for years. And they said they just like them because, they got a stressful situation at work or, something happened in a relationship. They just go back to them and just calm themselves again and reinforce it.
Wow. Just absolutely incredible. I love this perspective. So I know we got to close, but you're one of my favorite people. This is incredible.
Thank you. You too. I love that. Once we met, I knew we were going to do something together. So
Yeah.
this is exciting.
Yeah, we just because we have the same heart and we want to help people and heal people in a meaningful way that's going to have efficacy and all of that. So, Dr. Donwood, what is the best place for our listeners to come find you?
So go to the Inspired Performance Institute or Dr. Wood, PhD, and you'll find me. And then it gives you all the information. You can call in or you can just look at, I've been on tons of podcasts and stuff like that. You can learn a lot that way as well. Then we're just publishing our studies, which you know about. We're showing that we're actually changing the gene response, right? And it's amazing what we're seeing. And then we did the brain mapping. We're showing a up to 45% change in brain plasticity after going through the program. So there's a lot of really cool evidence.
Amazing. And I'm going to put all of that in the show notes. Please, I encourage people to share this with somebody. I mean, who hasn't been through some kind of trauma, right? And what an interesting and amazing way that we could heal and hurt people, and heal people. So if we can really get this groundswell of healed people, imagine what we could do.
Change the world.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
I enjoyed it. Thanks so much, Jimmy, for inviting me.
Okay, wow. What an eye-opening conversation with Dr. Don Wood. I know that was longer than our typical episode, but there was so much value packed in there. His approach to healing trauma, rewiring the brain, and breaking free from cycles of pain and addiction is truly transformative. If this episode resonated with you, or if you know someone could benefit from this powerful perspective, please share it. So here are the top 5 takeaways. Number 1, healing happens in the right conditions. The mind is designed to heal when placed in the optimal environment. Traditional talk therapy often keeps the brain in a stressed state, making it difficult to resolve your trauma effectively. Number 2, trauma creates a glitch in the brain. Past traumatic experiences are stored in high definition, and when the brain recalls them, it reacts as if the threat is happening in real time. This is why anxiety, panic attacks, and PTSD symptoms can feel so overwhelming. Number 3, your medical issues are real and trauma can make them worse. Dr. Wood is not suggesting that conditions like autoimmune disease, chronic pain, Crohn's disease, anxiety disorders, PTSD, any of those are, quote, all in your head. Instead, he highlights how unresolved trauma and stress affects the nervous system, inflammation, and the overall health of your entire body. Addressing trauma can support healing and recovery. Number 4, addiction is not a moral failing, it is a survival mechanism. Addiction isn't about seeking pleasure, it's about stopping pain. The subconscious mind operates in the present, and when it finds something that temporarily stops the suffering, like substances or compulsive behaviors, it creates a code that runs automatically. And number 5, you don't have to relive your trauma to heal. Unlike traditional therapy, Dr. Wood's approach does not require you to continuously talk about your past painful experiences. By resetting your brain's response to trauma, you can reduce emotional distress without having to rehash every painful detail. Now, for those people who are in particularly that space of addiction and recovery or caregiving for a loved one who is going through that journey, I would like to point you in the direction of Genius Recovery, where we believe in changing the global conversation around addiction from one of judgment to one of compassion. Whether you're on your own recovery journey or just seeking a community that understands, the Genius Recovery Support Hub is here for you. It's a private and secure space where you can find resources, connection, and real support. So please go to geniusrecovery.org to join that support hub today, whether for yourself or someone you care about, or to simply share it with those who need it most. Because when we heal together, we create ripples of hope that change lives. Thank you for listening to Navigating Hope. Until next time, keep seeking healing, keep extending compassion, and keep showing up for yourself and others. Thank you for tuning into Navigating Hope with me, Dr. Jaime Hope. It has been an honor to navigate the realms of health and wellness with you today. Remember, in the journey toward a healthier life, knowledge is your compass. If you enjoyed our time together, please share, like, and subscribe to Navigating Hope. Join us next week where we'll continue to empower your health journey, arming you with the wisdom to navigate life's challenges and keep the emergency room in your rearview mirror.